My name is Delia Marchetti. I am 29 years old, and right now the head of the surgical department at St. Michael's Hospital in Toronto is standing at the far end of my aunt's dining room table, holding a glass of Niagara Riesling. And the toast he started about my cousin's engagement has quietly, without anyone quite realizing it, become the most precise and public accounting of my entire life. He stopped walking at my chair. 1 second ago he was talking about integrity, about what it means to truly know the person you are choosing to stand beside. My mother was glowing the way she always glows when the house is full, and the food is right, and the story she has been telling about our family is performing exactly as rehearsed. My cousin was laughing softly into her fiancé's shoulder, and then Dr. Aldrich Voss looked down at me with something I can only describe as recognition. The way you look at someone you've been trying to place for 20 minutes, and have finally found, and said, in a voice that carried clean to the kitchen, "I have to say, I did not expect to see you here tonight." Then he asked the question that split the last 11 years of my life directly in half. "Which one are you, exactly, to this family?" Every fork stopped. My mother let out a short, bright laugh and moved to answer before I had finished drawing breath. "Oh, that's Delia. She does some admin work at a medical office. Very low-key." She said it with the same smooth warmth she uses when she explains away anything inconvenient. "Very private." Dr. Voss did not look at her. To understand how I became the daughter my own mother describes as low-key administrative staff. At a dinner party, where the guest of honor is a man who has personally read my published research, you have to understand the refrigerator door. I was 9 years old when I first noticed it. My cousin Renata was 7. The refrigerator door in my grandmother's kitchen in Hamilton, the one with the worn rubber seal and the magnet from Niagara Falls, my grandfather brought back in 1987, was covered in photographs and drawings and report cards. Renata's ballet recital. Renata at the Royal Botanical Gardens on a school trip. Renata with my aunt and grandmother, 3 of them squinting into the summer sun. I was in one photo. A birthday party, my 8th. I was half turned away from the camera, cut off at the shoulder, clearly mid-sentence. You could tell it was me only by the red sweater my mother had dressed me in that year. I climbed up on a step stool and moved a photo of myself. My school picture, grade 3, navy background, smile too wide for my face, to the center of the door. The next time I visited, it was back in the same drawer where my grandmother kept takeout menus and expired coupons. I never moved it again. I moved myself instead. That is the thing about being the child a family edits out of its own story. You have 2 choices. You can keep reaching for the front of the frame, or you can stop reaching for their frame entirely and build something they cannot crop. I chose the second one, and it took me 11 years to understand that the work was never going to migrate my photo forward. I did well in school in a way that felt almost involuntary, the way some kids fall into sports or music. Science came easily, math came easily, the logic of how bodies work, the way systems fail and compensate, and occasionally save themselves. That came easiest of all. I applied to McMaster's Health Sciences program, and got in on the first round. My mother called me the same evening. I remember standing in my student apartment in Hamilton listening to her tell me that my cousin had been promoted to floor supervisor at the Sheraton downtown. "She's managing a whole team now," my mother said. "I keep telling everyone." I had a letter from McMaster in my hand. I said, "Congratulations to Renata." My mother said, "You'll like Hamilton. It's not Toronto, but it's manageable." I already lived in Hamilton. She knew this. I did not point it out. I finished my undergraduate degree and kept going. Research assistantship in my second year. Published co-author on a paper about post-surgical infection rates before I turned 23. I deferred a seat at University of Toronto's medical school to complete a 2-year research fellowship at St. Michael's because the work they were doing there on sepsis outcomes in trauma patients was the most interesting thing I had ever read. My supervisor told me the fellowship would change my trajectory. She was right. My mother called me that spring. I had just gotten word that our team's research had been cited in a federal health policy review. The kind of citation that makes your supervisor take you to lunch and order the good pasta. I told her. There was a brief pause. "Renata got her certification," my mother said. "The one she's been working on, hospitality management." She framed it. I drove to Toronto with my supervisor's handshake still warm on my palm. I understand that this says something about me, that I kept reporting back to a source that had never once returned what I was offering. But there is something about wanting your mother to look at what you have built and say, "Yes, that is yours," that does not go away clean. It just goes underground. My name was never on my mother's Facebook page. Not once in 6 years. I know because a family friend stopped me at a Polish deli on Roncesvalles and said, with genuine warmth, "Your mother mentioned you've been between things for a while. It must be hard." I had just been shortlisted for a research award, given by the Ontario Medical Association. I did not correct her. The problem was never Renata. I want to be clear about that. Renata worked hard at what she did. Floor supervisor, then assistant events manager, then events coordinator for a boutique hotel group, with properties in Montreal and Quebec City. That is real work. The lie was not about Renata's worth. The lie was about mine. What my mother told people about Renata: she manages high-end client relationships for a multi-property hospitality group, oversees a full staff, handles event logistics for major corporate accounts. What my mother told people about me: she's in healthcare, admin side, very behind the scenes. She doesn't like to talk about it. I confronted her once gently over the phone. She was quiet for a moment and then said, "Not everyone understands research, Delia. There's nothing to show people." She paused. With Renata, people can picture it. A hotel, an event, flowers on a table. They can picture it. I am 29 years old. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in Parkdale, with 2 stacks of journals on the kitchen counter, and a spider plant I have kept alive for 3 years, through what I can only describe as mutual stubbornness. There is no Instagram-friendly version of infectious disease research. There is no photo that makes people say, "Oh, lovely." There is a spreadsheet, and a microscope, and a lot of late nights, and occasionally your work gets picked up in a federal health policy document, and changes the way hospitals allocate post-surgical monitoring resources for high-risk patients. My mother built a story about Renata instead, because Renata's story had flowers on a table. I never appeared on her social media. Not even in the background of a holiday photo. My elbow once in a Christmas shot. Cropped clean. 7 months before the dinner, I published the study I had been working on for 2 years. Post-surgical sepsis prediction in trauma patients, using a monitoring protocol our team developed at St. Michael's. The paper ran in the Canadian Journal of Surgery. Within 6 weeks, it had been cited in 4 hospital policy reviews across Ontario and British Columbia. Dr. Aldrich Voss. Senior surgeon, department head, the kind of man who reads everything and remembers all of it, sent a note to my supervisor. I heard about it secondhand, the way you hear about these things in research. He had flagged the paper in a departmental meeting, called it the most rigorous applied protocol work his team had reviewed in 2 years. I was sitting at my kitchen counter eating leftover dal when my supervisor forwarded me the email. I read it 3 times. I wanted to call my mother. I didn't. I want to be clear about that too. Not as a detail, as a pattern. For 11 years, every time something happened that I would have told a mother, I stopped 1 beat before dialing. Not because I didn't want to tell her. Because I had learned, with the precision of someone who processes evidence for a living, exactly what would happen when I did. The dinner was my aunt's idea, to celebrate my cousin Renata's engagement to a man named, I am using his family name here because it matters to the story, Theodor Voss, Dr. Aldrich Voss's son. This is the part that, in retrospect, had feeling of something arranged by a universe with a very dry sense of humor. I almost didn't go. My mother called 4 days before, not to invite me. My aunt had already called, but to brief me. That is the only word for it. She spoke the way a stage manager gives notes before opening night. Theodor's family is quite established, she said. His father is a surgeon, the real kind. Please just be pleasant and don't go into the work stuff. It makes people uncomfortable when they don't know what to say. What work stuff? The research. It's not dinner conversation. Just say you're in healthcare. Keep it vague. I said I would keep that in mind. I drove up the QEW on a Saturday in November. I had been to my aunt's house in Burlington exactly twice since my grandfather's funeral 4 years ago. The house still smelled like his pipe tobacco and her garlic bread, which is one of those sensory combinations that should not work, and absolutely does. I wore the blazer I had worn when I presented our research findings at the Ontario Hospital Association conference in September. I hadn't planned to. I reached for it by instinct, the way you reach for something that knows who you are. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She looked at me the way a director looks at an actor who has walked on in the wrong costume. You're early. She moved through the front hall with purpose. We should talk about the seating. My place card was at the far end of the table, near the kitchen door, behind a centerpiece so large it functioned as a wall. Tonight is about Renata, she said, adjusting a napkin ring that did not need adjusting. It's a big night for her, for this family. Just stay in the background, enjoy the food, let the evening breathe. The guests arrived, Renata and Theodor, flushed and happy. Dr. Voss and his wife, a quiet woman named Heloise, who had the specific self-containment of someone who reads a great deal and says what she means. My uncle on my mother's side, my aunt, who had cooked for 7 hours and was visibly proud of it. My mother introduced me as she walked Dr. Voss and Heloise toward the table. And this is my daughter Delia, healthcare admin, very behind the scenes. She was already turning toward the kitchen. Delia, could you get the bread from the oven? Dr. Voss shook my hand. Held it a half-beat longer than necessary. Something moved behind his eyes. The specific look of someone whose mental filing system has just flagged a folder it wasn't expecting to find at a dinner party in Burlington. I went to get the bread. Dinner was my mother at her most accomplished. She poured wine and passed dishes and narrated Renata's highlights. The new role, the properties in Quebec City, The clients Renata managed who had connections and expectations and all the texture that makes a story feel substantial. She was good at it, I will give her that. She was genuinely good at building the shape of a life in the mind of a listener. Every time conversation drifted toward me, she rerouted it. Heloise asked what I did exactly. My mother answered before I had finished my first word. Research support, mostly. Delia, is there more Riesling in the kitchen? She asked me 3 times to check on things in the kitchen. The 4th time I had started to answer Heloise's follow-up question directly, and my mother spoke over my first sentence so cleanly that Heloise apologized to her, as though she had interrupted. Then Dr. Voss tapped his water glass. He stood. He buttoned the middle button of his jacket the way men of a certain generation button jackets, when they are about to say something they mean. He spoke about family, about what it means to enter a new one with your eyes open, to understand not just the person you are choosing, but the shape of the world they come from. He was gracious about Renata. He said she had warmth and steadiness, and he could see why his son had found her. Then he picked up his glass and did something I had not seen coming. He walked, slowly, around the outside edge of the table. The way I realized that he probably walks a room during rounds, deliberate, unhurried, reading what he finds. He stopped at my chair. I have to say, he said, and the table went still. I did not expect to see you here tonight. My mother laughed, the papery sound she makes when she is managing a situation. Oh, Delia is our homebody. He didn't look at her. Which one are you, exactly? To this family? I thought about the bread I had retrieved from the oven. I thought about the place card behind the centerpiece. I thought about the grade 3 photo in the takeout menu drawer. I thought about the email my supervisor forwarded me. The one where this man had told a room full of surgeons that our work was the most research as Turkey he had seen 2 years. I'm their daughter, I said, and Renata's cousin. I'm a research scientist. I did my fellowship at St. Michael's, and I'm currently at the University of Toronto, infectious disease and post-surgical outcomes. My mother made a small sound. She does a bit of writing on the side, but really Dr. Voss turned toward her for the first time all evening. His expression was not unkind, it was simply without any performance in it. Mrs. Marchetti, he said. The monitoring protocol your daughter's team published in the Canadian Journal of Surgery this spring was cited in the policy briefings my department used to restructure our post-surgical monitoring for high-risk patients. We discussed it in 3 separate departmental meetings. It is changing how we do our work. I have been trying to get her supervisor on the phone for 6 weeks to discuss a collaboration. The table was very quiet. Heloise set her fork down. She looked at my mother with the careful expression of a woman who has long since stopped wasting warmth on performances. You told us she was in admin, she said. Those were your exact words. Healthcare admin, behind the scenes. My mother touched her napkin. I didn't want to make the evening about. You told me, Renata said from across the table, and her voice was strange. Not loud, just very flat. Last month, you told me that Delia had been finding work difficult. That she'd had a hard few years. I was concerned. I told Theodore that. Renata was not looking at my mother now. She was looking at me. I told his parents when they asked about our family. I said my cousin had been struggling. She put her hand flat on the table. That is not true. I knew it wasn't fully true and I let you say it because it was easier. I am sorry, Delia. I should not have done that. My mother's eyes filled. I was protecting us. Delia's work is very niche, very technical. It doesn't fit naturally into. Heloise spoke quietly. What you're describing isn't protection. It's editing. You edited one person out of the family story, so the other one would look better in the frame. Those aren't the same thing. My uncle, who had been so still all evening that I had half forgotten he was there, looked up from his plate. She's right, Linda. You went too far with this one. Dr. Voss reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. He walked around the table to my corner and placed a card beside my water glass. Call my assistant. Monday, say, morning. I would like to discuss what a formal collaboration between your team and ours might look like. This is long overdue. Renata looked at Theodore for a long moment, the kind of look that is a full conversation. Then she reached for the ring on her left hand. She didn't pull it off dramatically. She set it on the table almost gently, the way you set down something you are not done with, just done carrying for right now. I need to think, she said to him. Not to the room. To him. I need to understand what I have been told about my own family. I need to know what you were told, and whether I knew, and what it means that I let some of it go. I'm not saying no to us. I'm saying I need a few weeks to understand what I was standing inside of tonight. I stood up, I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. I picked up the business card and my blazer from the back of my chair. I turned to my mother. I was not angry, which surprised me a little. I thought I would be. I had been carrying something for 11 years that I had always assumed was mostly anger. Standing there in my aunt's dining room in Burlington, I found out it was mostly grief. Grief is heavier, but it is also cleaner. It does not require the other person to feel it with you. I love you, I said. I have always loved you. but I have spent 11 years making myself easier to explain so that you would feel more comfortable at dinner parties. That ends tonight. If you want me at your table, I'm there as exactly who I am. Not the vague version, not the admin version. All of it, or I'm not there." She flinched. My aunt looked at her tablecloth. My uncle bowed his head. I walked out. I drove back down the QEW in the dark with the radio off and the heat on, and Dr. Voss's business card in my jacket pocket. I did not cry until I was past Oakville. Then I cried for about 15 minutes, for the photo in the drawer and the elbow in the Christmas shot, and every time I had stood at the edge of a phone call and chosen not to make it. Then I stopped. I put the radio on. I got a coffee at a Tim Hortons in Mississauga. I drove home to Parkdale. There were 11 messages by morning. My mother, escalating in increments. The first was confused. The middle 3 were hurt. The last ones had the quality of someone who has been sitting alone in the dark for a long time constructing a version of events in which she was the injured party. "You embarrass this family in front of people who matter," she said in the 9th one. "I hope your research keeps you warm." My cousin Renata, very late that night, one message, voice small and tired. "I don't know how to sort through all of this, but I am not angry at you. I just want you to know that." My uncle at 6:50 in the morning. 4 sentences. He said he was sorry he had been quiet for so long. He said quiet was its own kind of choice and he had been making it too easily for too many years. He said I deserved better from both of them. He said he was going to try to do differently. And a number I didn't have saved. Heloise Voss. "My husband has been talking about your research for months. I would love to have coffee sometime if you're ever open to it. Just the 2 of us." We met 3 weeks later at a cafe on Queen West. She ordered an Americano and got directly to the point, in the way I was already learning to recognize as specific to her. "Your mother told me, the first time we spoke on the phone about the engagement, that you had struggled to find your footing since school," she said. She said it with such care. I believed her. I said, "She has been saying variations of that story since I was in my first year of undergrad. She updates the details but the structure stays the same." Heloise wrapped her hands around her cup. "What do you call it when someone does that? When they keep telling a story about you that isn't true, to people who matter for years?" I thought about it. "I used to call it the refrigerator door," I said. "You keep checking to see if they've put your picture back in the front, whether they've decided yet that you belong in the part of the story people are supposed to see. Did they ever?" "Once," I said, "eventually." Renata called 6 weeks after the dinner. We talked for a long time, not a clean conversation, not a resolved one, but a real one. She told me she had known the version my mother was telling wasn't right. She told me she had let it stand because correcting it felt like choosing sides. And she had not wanted to choose. She said she understood now that not choosing had been a choice with consequences, and that the consequences had landed on me, and she was sorry. Real apologies come in pieces. That is the thing no one tells you. They are not speeches. They are installments. Renata and Theodore are doing well. The ring went back on 2 months later. No announcement, just a photo she sent me on a Tuesday afternoon. A coffee mug on her left hand, around it winter light coming through a window. No caption. I wrote back, "I see it. I'm glad." My mother called on a Thursday evening in February. I was eating pasta at my kitchen counter. She opened with small talk about the weather, which told me she was nervous. My mother is never interested in weather. Then she said, "I have been thinking about what you said, and about some things Renata told me. And I've been trying to understand why I did it. Why I told people what I told them for so long." A long silence. "I think I didn't understand what you did. And instead of asking you to help me understand it, I told a story that was easier. I told it so many times that I think I started to believe it was true." Another license, shorter. "I'm sorry, Delia. I am sorry for making you smaller so I could fit you somewhere I understood. That wasn't fair to you." It was not the apology I had imagined. I had imagined something public, something that reversed every dinner party where she had described me as behind-the-scenes scenes. Every social media post I had never appeared in. What I got was a tired woman eating reheated soup on a Thursday night, telling the truth in fragments, for what I think was genuinely the first time. "If you want to start again," I said, "it has to be with the real version of me. The whole thing. You can ask me questions about the work. I will explain it as many times as it takes. But I won't be the vague one anymore. I won't be the one you leave out of the frame." She said, "I know. I'm going to try." I drove to Hamilton to see my grandmother on a Sunday in March. No occasion. She is 83, and she still makes her garlic bread on Sundays, and her house still smells like pipe tobacco. And I realized, sitting in her kitchen, that I had been avoiding it for 4 years, because walking in there meant walking past the refrigerator door. I looked at it when I arrived. My grade 3 school photo, the one with the navy background and the too wide smile and the red sweater, was on the center of the door. Not behind a takeout menu. Not in a drawer. Front and center, held up with the Niagara Falls magnet. The space around it was a little crowded, rearranged slightly, like someone had taken the other things down, and put them back up without a clear plan. Like someone had made a decision quickly and then not quite known what to do with what had been holding the center of that door for so long. My grandmother came out of the kitchen drying her hands on a dish towel. She looked at me, looking at the door. "Your mother dropped by last week," she said simply. We sat down for lunch, garlic bread and soup, and the late winter light coming sideways through the window over the sink. My grandmother asked me to tell her about the study, from the beginning, like I was explaining it to someone who had never heard of any of it. So I did. She asked questions when she didn't follow something. She stopped me twice to make sure she understood the part about the monitoring protocol, what it changed, what it meant for the patients. When I got to the part about the policy briefing, she sat back in her chair and said, simply, "Well, good for you." 3 words, from an 83-year-old woman eating soup in Hamilton on a Sunday afternoon. They felt like a standing ovation. It was not a fixed family. I want to be honest about that. It was not the end of the work. My mother and I are still learning the grammar of a new version of our relationship. And there are days when I can hear her slipping back into old patterns, describing me in a way that softens the edges, and I have to say something, and she has to hear it, and we have to keep going. That is what it looks like. Not healed, not finished. A door that was sealed for 11 years and is now open, and both of us are learning how to use it. If you have ever sat at a table where your own family described you to the people you might have most wanted to impress as the quiet one, the behind-the-scenes one, the one who didn't quite find her footing, hear this. The story they told about you was not the true story. It was the story that was easier for them to carry. The night Dr. Voss stopped at my chair and asked who I was to my own family, I thought that telling the truth might cost me my mother permanently. What it actually cost me was the character she had written for me, the administrative, low-key, difficult-to-explain daughter who does not fit cleanly into anyone's dinner party narrative. I have been that character for 11 years. I am done reading from that script, and if you are sitting somewhere right now, in a family that has given you a role that requires you to be less than what you actually are, the first person who needs to know you have decided to stop playing it is not them. It is you.